The movie opens on a courtroom as a judge issues a restraining order against a middle-aged woman named Melinda and advises her to seek professional help for anger management issues. During the court-appointed sessions, Melinda blames her ex-husband for everything and accuses him of taking advantage of her. When the therapist questions her about her life, Melinda reluctantly agrees to share everything that had happened. In the past, we see Melinda bumping into a man named Robert Gale during a rainy evening at college. Already upset with the weather, Melinda loses control and hits him before walking away. But later that night, Robert visits her dorm room to return documents she had dropped during their meeting earlier. After her roommate Sarah insists she talks to him, Melinda takes her documents back but asks him to leave so she can finish her paper. Robert, however, points out a few mistakes he noticed while going through her documents, which finally gets her attention, and she agrees to take his help. The next day in the library, Robert tells her his dream of building a battery that is capable of charging itself, something that will solve basic power issues and make him rich. Over the tutoring sessions, Melinda begins warming up to Robert, and the two become close. One day, while Robert comforts Melinda over her poor grades, her sisters Brenda and June show up and tell her her mother has died. Robert attends the funeral with Melinda, where Brenda and June express their discomfort with having him around, especially knowing his poor financial situation. After introducing Robert to their husbands, Calvin and Casey, they tell him about Devon, Melinda's ex-boyfriend, hoping it would upset him. But Robert does not show any reaction. Seeing Melinda busy with her family, Robert tries to sneak out of the house, but she stops him to thank him for being there. Knowing he came by train, Melinda drops him off back at his RV, where they end up having sex. The two start to date, but Melinda's sisters are not happy with their coupling. They advise her not to tell him about the inheritance their mother left, as they believe Robert is only after the money. On their next date, Robert tells Melinda he wants to sell his project to a venture capitalist, Preston and Howard. Melinda promises to stay by his side, and Robert shares that he wants to marry her one day. As he often worries about money, Melinda decides to buy him a car as a gift. But a few days after, Melinda stops hearing from Robert. She calls him, but he tells her that he is just busy working on his battery project. Suspicious of his behavior, Melinda drives over to his RV, where she finds him cheating on her with another woman named Diana Wells. Enraged, Melinda crashes her car into the RV with both of them inside, before destroying his new car and attacking him before passing out. Melinda is rushed to the hospital, where she has to undergo a full hysterectomy due to her excessive internal injuries, leaving her unable to have children. Robert tries to come see her in the hospital, but Brenda forces him to leave as she holds him responsible for the accident. A few days later, when Melinda is on bed rest in her home, Robert visits her again to apologize and patch things up again. After they get back together, Robert tells her he lost his scholarship, so Melinda decides to pay for his last 2 semesters herself. Moved by her gestures, Robert asks her to marry him, and she happily accepts, but her sisters refuse to attend the wedding. For the next year, Robert spends most of his time working on the battery while Melinda supports him financially. When Robert fails to sell his product to Preston, Melinda is forced to get a job at Sarah's office, pulling double shifts as an office assistant and a cleaning lady because she does not want to go back to her sisters for help. A few months later, Robert thinks he has succeeded in finalizing his innovation, but when he tries to use the battery to power the entire house, he has an accident which damages the entire wiring system and puts them into debt. When Robert eventually graduates from university, Melinda is overwhelmed as she thinks he will finally get a job and she won't have to carry the entire burden of their finances herself. However, her happiness doesn't last long, as Robert reveals he had spent 2 years in prison for trying to rob a grocery store, and no companies are ready to hire a felon. Seeing she is disappointed in him, he assures her he just needs to perfect his battery design and secure an interview with Prescott, so Melinda has no choice but to trust him again. This time, she mortgages her house to pay for his research as she still believes in him, but this routine ends up continuing for almost 2 decades, with him never having a breakthrough. By this time, Diana has become a secretary at Preston, and Robert approaches her to arrange a meeting with her boss, but it does not go over well. The next day, Robert gets a call from the security officer at Prescott, who warns him not to send any more letters or try to contact their employees, or else they will have to call the police. Frustrated, Robert throws his stuff away, and Melinda begs him to focus on getting a job for once so he can help support them too. Knowing the couple will soon lose their house, Melinda's sisters visit them with a plan to save their home. Although still mad at her, they suggest they get a loan from the owner of the restaurant they deliver food for and join them at work. Calvin tells Robert the money will be enough to release the house, but he will have to be on time and never miss a payment, otherwise their trucks might get repossessed. As they insist he give it a try, Robert reluctantly agrees to do it. Robert starts working with them, but is not happy about giving up on his project and ignores Melinda as punishment. In the meantime, Diana watches videos of Robert's research and decides to give him a chance. She calls him right in the middle of delivering an important order for the company and informs him that she has arranged his meeting with Prescott. Overwhelmed, he abandons the work to return to the city and visit Prescott. Calvin and Casey find out and rush over to the house to scold him for trying to mess with their jobs and decide to deliver the order themselves. As they leave, Melinda confronts Robert that her sister had found Diana's wallet in his truck and thinks he is cheating on her again. Melinda has another breakdown and starts fighting with him until her sisters intervene, taking her inside the house while Robert leaves for the interview. After making it to the company's office, Robert tells Diana about the fight, but she tells him to focus on his pitch as it's his only chance to make his dreams come true. As Robert begins his presentation, Calvin and Casey tell their wives that they could not deliver the order on time and so will not get paid. In the meeting, Prescott is impressed by Robert's work and offers him $800,000 to sell his invention and the research, but Robert refuses, insisting to keep the patent in his name. Returning home after, Robert explains to Melinda that he only met Diana for business reasons, but no one believes him. Melinda also expresses her anger with him for not accepting a deal which could have solved all their problems and asks for a divorce. Robert collects his stuff and leaves the house, which is soon foreclosed by the bank. Melinda's depression worsens as she is forced to live with her sisters while Robert takes refuge at a shelter. Seeing her upset, Melinda's sisters set her up with her ex, Devon, who is now divorced and living single. While on a date together, Melinda spots Robert working in the kitchen of the restaurant and thinks all of her struggles were in vain as he could never even secure a stable job. A few days later, Robert meets Melinda in the lawyer's office and tries to apologize, but when she refuses to listen, he signs the divorce papers and leaves. When Robert gets a call from Diana, he tells her about living in a shelter, and she picks him up and takes him to live at her house, where she comforts him that things will get better with time. After a few days, Diana tells him Prescott has offered him a multi-million-dollar deal where he can keep the copyright to himself and just license the battery to the company. Robert begins to cry, overjoyed that after everything he went through, he has finally got what he worked his entire life for. After finalizing the deal, Robert visits Melinda at her office and gives her a check for $10 million and the keys to her house, which she had just bought back. Now regretting her decision to leave him, Melinda returns home and tells her sisters about what happened with Robert. Frustrated, Melinda accuses her sisters of destroying her life by constantly interfering with her relationship with Robert. Melinda then visits Robert at his penthouse, where she tries to seduce him, but is shocked after Diana shows up and introduces herself as Robert's fiancée. Feeling humiliated, Melinda storms out of the penthouse, angry that Diana is living the life that could have been hers. Imagining the two of them together, Melinda becomes consumed by her rage. When Melinda learns Robert has been buying Diana everything she ever wanted, Melinda begins stalking her and posting hate comments online. One day, while Diana is busy with wedding preparations, Robert tells her that Melinda is suing them, claiming the deal happened before their divorce. The hearing begins, but after examining the documents between Robert and Prescott, the judge declares Melinda's allegations false and dismisses the case. Robert and Diana file a counter lawsuit against Melinda for harassing them and get a restraining order issued against her. Seeing her rising frustration, Melinda's sisters advise Robert and Diana to hire security for their wedding, as they fear Melinda may try to intervene. Meanwhile, Melinda shows up and picks a fight with them for talking behind her back. Furious, Melinda then visits the bridal boutique to destroy Diana's wedding dress with acid. Melinda is then called to the court again, where she learns about Diana's pregnancy. On the judge's orders, Melinda attends counseling sessions where the therapist suspects she might have borderline personality disorder, but Melinda disagrees. The therapist says she should have listened to Robert's justifications, but Melinda is not ready to accept her mistake and walks out of the office. As Robert and Diana get married on a yacht, Melinda's family keeps her at the house to prevent her from hurting them. Melinda, however, manages to sneak out of the house and raids Robert's boat, where she accuses him of wasting the best years of her life and shoots him. Robert tries to reason with her, but Melinda is still not ready to listen and makes the crew members jump off the boat before confronting Diana. Robert intervenes and throws Melinda into the water before asking Diana to start the boat, getting her to save the crew members first. Melinda makes it back on board again and intends to kill Robert with an axe, but is caught by the anchor and dragged into the water. Melinda drowns while Diana and the crew members rush to rescue Robert. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.